viewers, and welcome to this TFN exclusive. I am Sergio Brito. Well, the Gambia Teachers Union is the latest to embark on an industrial action asking all its employees to stay at home after government failed to honor their end of the bargain. Joining me today in the studio is the Deputy Secretary General of the GTU, Mr. Essa, Sowe, and Economist Alhaji Mamadi Kurang. Welcome to the Fatu Network, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sergio.
Let's get this right off the bat, Mr. Sowe. The Gambia Teachers Union came out with a press statement yesterday rebuking the Gambia government for allegedly ignoring all 9 demands the union had sent as regards the payment of salaries and allowances. For starters, give us a rundown of these 9 demands. What are they about?
Thank you very much, and thank you for this piece. Actually, we have up to 9 demands for a start to begin with. First and foremost, we have 2 surrounding what we call zonal allowance. The country has been divided into zones, Zone 1 and Zone 2. Zone 1 is MBR and LRR to be specific, and Zone 2 rather is CRR North, South, and URR. Civil servants, to be specific, are entitled to 15% of their basic salary as zonal allowance for those working in LRR and NBR, and then 23% for CRR and URR. What we have realized, and according to the General Order, precisely, if you visit the General Order, Chapter 5, to be precise, I guess, Section 3, Paragraph 5, it is very categorical that these zonal allowance are attached to the worker's basic salary. Yeah. So if a 30% increment is done, then the 15% or 20% should be reflective of the 30%. Instead, they are using the previous pay scale. That's the first irony. Worst of all, also surrounding the zonal allowance, even the 15 and the 23 that was being paid before July has been reduced. So you see, so rather than even maintaining what was there, rather than increasing, reflecting it to the increment, it has been reduced. So you can see it's a double stroke in respect of zonal allowance. Also, the same Section 3, Paragraph 4, to be precise, it has to do with what we call local transfer allowance. Government is required to pay an appropriate reallocation fee of 1/60th of civil servants' annual salary when you are displaced from one zone, from one place to another. At the beginning of every academic year, the ministry and precisely the regional education directors will embark on what we call staff stabilization to check whether they have the required quotas in the respective schools in terms of subjects and all whatnot. And then after this exercise, some teachers are moved from one location to the other, and in some extent from one region to another. Right. And in most instances, no, in all instances, they fend their own way to those respective regions. And for one reason or another, if for some economic or other reasons you couldn't make it, when PMO or MOPSI is on its monitoring visit, and they miss you out, if you don't mind, your salary will be stopped. So that's another issue. We have also matters related to double shift. Double shifting of infrastructure and double shifting of staff, according to the Education Sector Policy 2016-2030, is an internal efficiency measure mechanism. And as a result, we have 2 concerns regarding that. The Regional Education Directorate and their staff, their double shift, which used to be 50% of their basic salary, has been reduced to 25%. By the Personal Management Office. But that aside, the drivers who would drive these education officers around the region, some of these terrains are very difficult to track, would spend with their officers from morning to 6 p.m. and they are not paid a dime out of that. Equally, we have some schools, quite a good number of schools, running double shift, meaning working in the morning and the afternoon, and we have caretakers working from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. They are not paid a single butut. And these caretakers are receiving nothing more than $2,000, so to speak, if I am right. The worst of all is you'll be surprised to know that even the initial 50% increment was not affected, has not affected the caretakers for that matter. And for your surprise, for your information too, quite a good number of the same caretakers in many schools are working on voluntary basis and are still not enrolled or employed and not receiving salaries. Is it? So if you still look at the Regional Education Directorate too, which we have not mentioned, you'll come across teachers and head teachers and principals for that matter, whose services, due to the exigency of the work, have been transferred to their respective regional directorates as either education officers or cluster monitors. And because they are teachers and not redesignated as officers, they are not paid the double shift allowance. And according to policy, 5 categories of staff are entitled to double shift. It's the director, the principal education officers, the senior education officers, and cluster monitors. Now, they are functioning as cluster monitors and education officers, but the only crime they commit is that they have not been redesignated. And that is not their fault. Also, we have issues of categorization of schools. We've embarked on, sometime in 2018, a desk review and realized that over 550 teachers then were in the system, working for 20 years and above on the same grade. And then, finally, we work with the current management of the ministry to cut a long story short. In 2020, the number appreciated to over close to 1,000 teachers were found to be in the system for working for 20 years and above on the same grade, grade 6. Some of them retired on the same grade without any, promotions or otherwise. And one main reason for that is the fact that quite a good number of our schools are not categorized. Some 7, 8, 9, or 10 years ago, 52% of our lower basic schools were not categorized. And the implication of a school not categorized is the fact that it is not going to be budgeted for. If it is not budgeted for, then no vacancies exist. And if no vacancies exist, nobody can be promoted. So you see, teachers are sentenced to grade 6, if you like. And yes, also, you have also schools, even though they are categorized, you have teachers who are appointed, so who are redeployed or posted to those schools. And the same General Order Chapter 2, Section 2, Paragraph 2, if I can remember vividly, has catered for a charge allowance where you are functioning, you are operating as a school manager and not necessarily given any acting appointment or formal appointment, you're entitled to charge allowance. If you look at the history of education, that has never been paid, and we've been talking about that. And also, we have the issue of invigilation fees. Teachers invigilating grade 12 exams, the worst exams, are subject to very serious conditions. If you are not lucky and to be found wanting, if you don't mind, you will not only be prosecuted, but you'll be blacklisted. It means you may not operate as a teacher anymore in this country.
So this strike is already in effect, especially in the Greater Banjul area.
Very well.
Right. So how long are Gambian teachers going to stay at home? Because if government chose not to respond, that means you're staying at home for as long as they remain silent.
Obviously, actually, regions 1 and 6 are meant to resume today. According to our monitors, this strike is in effect. In fact, surprisingly, if you don't mind, you wouldn't even realize that Region 1 has resumed today. Yes, we are going to stay as long as they fail to give us appropriate responses. The status quo shall remain the same.
But wouldn't it be selfish, for both parties, the Gambia Teachers Union and the government, to put these, kids under these conditions in the first place, especially when you could have, sat down and explore other avenues to open dialogue and then come to terms?
Yes, but no. No on our side, for the simple fact that we did some investigation. We engaged accordingly. We demanded for answers, and then we couldn't, during our engagements, people were shifting blames from one quarter to the other, and we decided to be very professional. And what we did was, we said, okay, fine. Now, since PMO is responsible for the manpower budgeting of the ministry, so to speak, so let's try to the Minister of Public Service and then drawing the attention of the Permanent Secretary Personal Management Office. And of course, for information, we have copied the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education. We have copied the National Assembly Select Committee for Education, Training and ICT. We have copied the Secretary General and Head of the Civil Service, and we have copied the Permanent Secretary Minister of Finance. So if it is a matter of being, to be honest with you, the fact that we've not been responded to 2 weeks, we saw it as tantamounting to lack of respect to the union. So we are not selfish because we've done what we are supposed to do. See, interestingly enough, when results are out, people will blame teachers. We got to the point of castigating them, and we pay little attention to the inputs. As unionists, the working condition of the teacher determines the learning outcome of the student, and people don't pay attention to the inputs. And the most critical factor here is the teacher, to be honest with you. And sadly, even at some point, some of these allowances are not even forthcoming. So I will disagree that we are selfish, and it's just unfortunate. And I will agree that this could have been averted if government has professionally reacted by, displaying a moral responsibility and duty by engaging us.
Right. Before we get into the economics of things, Mr. Kurang, you know what they say, that if any society wants to move forward, the first thing you need to do is to invest in education. What is your response to this whole thing about the Gambia Teachers Union and the government of the Gambia?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sowe. I think I am trying to begin to understand the broader perspective of the issue. And what I can see, obviously, I see budgetary control process problems, right. From the level of the government, the cabinet, the Ministry of Finance. And I'm also seeing some administrative issues, which you could say have got to do with the PMO or the Civil Service Administration, as well as the Ministry of Education itself. Now, in the perspective of the budgetary control issue, or the cabinet has come out through the Ministry of Finance to say that they are effecting a 30% increase. And if you are a civil servant, a teacher or a nurse, obviously you would take your pen and paper and then see if there is a 30% increase according to the law, how much you are entitled to. And I think that's what most of the teachers have done. So if they have done the promise and then there is a bill passed in the parliament, everybody is expecting that this would come to you. So, it obviously boggles the mind to see that, after the final payments or when the payments start coming in, people do their calculation and it's different from what is coming in. Right. That's why I said that's a budgetary control process, because you could not put that entirely on the Ministry of Education.
In fact, it seems like the matter is above the Ministry of Education.
That's what I'm saying. It's up to the cabinet level, which has the responsibility, for taking care of the budget and distributing it among the different line ministries. Now, we'll come to that more, but I think also there are administrative issues that I can see. It very much, when he mentioned, particularly about the categorization of the schools, and also the handling of the non-teaching staff of the ministry or the schools. You could see that some of this, obviously, a budget is just a tool, but obviously you are affected. A budget is affected by other factors that comes before the budget. For example, if you say you are going to categorize the schools, obviously you have to have a system in which you want to make sure you categorize the schools. And you know that this categorization has got budgeting implications. So if you let administrative lapses come in terms of categorization, they will come and be reflected in when the budget comes in, because the man sitting there doing the Excel and the budgets actually, at the Ministry of Finance also do not know so much about the categorization. He will be given a template and he will apply it. He will apply on it. But then there are authorities within the Civil Service Administration as well as the Ministry of Education, whose responsibility is it to see that we have got procedures in place to make sure that schools are properly authorized and categorized, and people who are affected by those categorizations are compensated. So this is one of the problems we can see, developing within the situation.
So when this whole 30% increment thing started when, Parliament approved the revised budget last year. In fact, a lot of people were against it because they said, it was only a matter of time before government sinks into a quagmire of economic disaster. A lot of people said this was something that was not sustainable.
Yeah.
I mean, as an economist, looking at our current economic situation, do you think this was something that the government should have even started?
I think we have said it before. You see, budgetary macroeconomic policy, also has a political dimension. And when you have an economic situation like this, you have increasing prices and you have a lack of growth in the economy, lack of job opportunities. The government is under pressure from the civil service and the public sector to increase allowances to match up with cost of living. So, and the government knows that it has a budget in which it is committed to certain principles within the budget. For example, you know how much you earn within a year, and you know what are your commitments already. And if you are going to really increase your commitments, like a 30% increase, you must have really put into consideration where this revenue is going to come from to finance this 30%, and what are the other commitments that will be affected. It's not just a political score that the government has to score and then make certain statements based on that. So the 30% we know, the government has a deficit problem already, meaning that it is spending more than it is earning, far much more. And the inflationary pressures that are coming in is putting more pressure on the government. However, the 30%, once you announce it, you have to be able to stick to it. And if you are not able to stick to the 30%, you don't have to be silent about it. You have to come forward and tell people. There is a problem there, because what we can read from the undertones is that, even though the 30% is applied, it seems that some people are not complaining, like which you said at the beginning of your statement. People up there, at the level of the Palm Secretary, at the level of the minister.
This is why I want to talk about, pay discrimination.
Yeah.
Because not all civil servants are mad about this 30% increment, because we know that the high income earners, would earn more. But what happens to the low income earners?
That's it. That's the issue, because we have had about the 30% increment, and we know that lots of people have no complaints because they have got their 30% straight and fine. So pay disputes will always exist so long as disparity and unfairness, some kind of unfairness exists. People will always, okay, I don't mind if you say 10% and everybody gets 10%. I wouldn't have much to complain about. But if you say 30% and my 30% come as a 25%, while other people have got their 30% with no problems, obviously there would be a complaint. And I think that is one of the situations we can see here. These allowances are very important for teaching staff. And it's only in maybe teaching and, let's say, in nursing, for example, that you will hear allowances about zonal allowances, hardship allowances, etc. So it's a key part of the delivery system, in the educational sector. And therefore, obviously, if they are not reflected as they should be according to the general orders and the service rules, obviously it would be seen to be unfair. And I think that's what we are seeing right now.
Mr. Sowe, this strike is already in effect in the Greater Banjul area. What's going to happen in the next couple of days if government fails to respond?
Like I said earlier on, the ball is in their court. They are in the driving seat. What they need to do is to make sure that they respond appropriately and accordingly, for that matter.
Because, we have to understand that Gambians can be very reactionary. So you might have been going back and forth and tried to get them to say something, but immediately you come out with a press statement, they might have reached out. Have they?
Informally, yes, because we receive a couple of telephone calls, which we'll find difficult to acknowledge. We've written to government, let them write back and then, share with us what their position is in respect of, because we argue from point of view of policies. So this is not a simple matter where we can, sit over the table, okay, like the Fullers will say, amen and amen, Jabi, we had and it is fine. No. So we want them to react to our demands, and then we will review that, and that would determine our next line of action. To be honest with you, I guess There are two issues here, an issue of unfairness and an issue of lack of respect to 40% of the civil service.
Mr. Kurang, I mean, let's talk to Mr. Kurang, the politician. Do you think that Gambia as a country is serious about, our education sector? I mean, you've mentioned it already, that when results come out, people will go straight and start attacking the teachers. Do you think we're taking education as something serious in this country? Because it has to start with the investment.
Exactly. I don't think it's been given the respect it deserves. I've been a teacher myself for most of my professional life, and it's really very hard. Nobody goes to teaching to be rich. You go there because you have this urge to serve your country and to give something back to society. But obviously, like we said, teaching is both the brain, the heart, and also the stomach. You have to have the brain, you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the heart, because you have to have the desire to give back to people. But you cannot do all that on an empty stomach. It's not possible. So teachers need to eat, they need to pay their rents, they need to take care of their families. And as he said, 40% of the work of the public service, teachers basically constitute the most dominant sector in the civil service. So if you are coming out with a plan of increment of salaries, well, teaching should be one of your main focus areas, because it is one of the major sectors in terms of government employment. So it has to be part of their focus. And we know that the country has been experiencing very serious downtrends in terms of the output. And like Mr. Sowe said, the output depends on the input. We all have reservations about the performances of the schools at every level. And we've been seeing certain trends which we know. The issue of double shift came here. And the double shift itself is still a problem because, the ministry had come out and said, we need a certain amount of money. For example, 2.5 billion, I had the permanent secretary say before, that in order to get rid of the double shift and then put every student on a morning shift and then have adequate contact hours that can, will reflect on their results, because this is what is normal. What is happening is not normal. And if it is not normal, it means we are struggling. So if we are struggling and the people taking care of that double shift are not being taken care of, then it's like this problem is being compounded. So I think one or two things. The first thing is the government lacks a strategic outlook about how to deal with fundamental problems like this, in the sense that there has to be a long-term plan of how the government wants to solve some fundamental problems in the educational sector, such as categorization. You can put it in terms of trying to performance, let's say, evaluation. It's a kind of a performance evaluation, and the education sector is a competitive sector. So if there is a problem in evaluating and upgrading and promoting people in your educational system, then you have a very, very big fundamental problem, because that will reflect on your results. If there is a problem also in compensating performance and service in the teaching sector, there is a problem. And apart from that, we already know, like I said, there are problems with investments, which are long-term investments in terms of more schools and more investments in teacher trainings. I always say, well, one key criteria to show that the government has much to be desired in terms of the input into the teaching sector is look at the Gambia College. It has been the backbone of the education sector of this country for many decades. The teachers have been produced. But recently, you go there and every student in the college has a problem with school fees. And this is so abnormal, because we're trying to say that Gambia should produce its own teachers. And these people need the resources of the state to be trained. So I think it is still not too late and never too late for the government to have a plan to make sure that the education, the teaching it becomes easy and all free for teachers to be trained so that they can be put into the system and be well compensated.
Some people will tell you that the Gambia College has almost become like a dumping, ground for people who are basically unemployed. And I remember having this interview with you, and you said, if you were the Ministry of Education or the government of the Gambia, you would make it tougher for people to get into the Gambia College than it will be for the University of the Gambia.
Yeah, I would definitely have, I will take Gambia College very seriously, because he just said, Mr. Sowe just said that, in order for you to have the desired output in terms of results and in student production, you need the inputs. And one of the key inputs, in the education sector is the teacher. So, and the teacher, you have to look at where the teacher is made. And the teachers are made in the Gambia College. So if you want to put emphasis on the inputs, you look for the major input. If the major input is the teacher, then you look at the major factor that will determine you to have a good teacher, and that's at the college. So I would say that you need to be strict about who gets to the college, one, but also anybody who can get there and wants to teach, obviously, should be able to do it without problem of paying school fees. And now one of the major problems of teachers is to pay fees. So it becomes like, okay, if you have the money, just go there, and then if you don't have the money, even if you are a good teacher, you still cannot do it. And that's going to handicap the system. So I think this is why I think the emphasis, the Gambia College we should be thinking about how to turn it into a university of its own, a teaching university, where people, I complain, I tell people, why do I have to go to Gambia College, for example, and spend 3 years and I don't have a degree? And then somebody else leaves his country after grade 12, he goes to England or Sweden, he spent 3 years in college, and he gets a bachelor's degree. So something is wrong with the system. And I think there are fundamental issues when we don't question. Well, we are so much attached to this colonial idea of diploma. Go to the college, do 3 years, and get a diploma. I don't subscribe to it. I think if you standardize, you improve the grading, the state of the college. There are private colleges around the country that people are spending 3 years, and they're getting degrees, and they're being employed by the Ministry of Education as degree holders. So where is the equity in the education management system?
Mr. Sowe, how are Gambian teachers responding to this sit-down strike? Because, in Gambia, whenever there's an industrial action, there is always some sort of division. Like I tell you, not like the Gambia Transport Union, because they are very unserious with what they do. Because 1 minute they are doing this, and the next thing you know, another group is saying something differently. How are Gambian teachers responding to the strike?
To begin with, it's important that you understand our structures. The basic unit of the Gambia Teachers Union is the school or educational establishment. And these schools are located in clusters. So in every cluster, about 60 of them in this country, schools within that catchment area would come together and form a cluster executive and identify local leadership. Now, the chairpersons of each of the clusters has a direct seat on the regional executive committee. We have 7 designated regional executive committees, and the chairpersons of the regional executive committees sit on the national executive. So it is very effective because information has filtered to every corner in this country. This is the most effective teacher strike that this country has ever seen since the 1966 strike that the union sanctioned. You might not get this thing as part of your history, but 1966, the union sanctioned a strike. Because I'm saying this is effective because I don't want to say this with too much of emphasis because students and parents are affected. I just have to be sensitive. But just to answer to your question, the feedback we receive from our respective regional coordinators is that it is very, very effective. So far, I have names of 6 schools in Region 6, and they have given me excuses that we are reviewing, and then we've engaged them accordingly and hope that tomorrow they will respond. For Region 1, I have not received the report yet. Immediately after this, I'm going back to do a review and then to assess the level of success. Thank you.
You've mentioned some very eye-catching issues, from the allowances to, not just teachers, but other people who also work in the education sector. One thing I noticed is that the issue of hardship allowances has always been there in the education sector. In fact, I've seen people refuse to go to, certain places where they have been posted because of, the suffering that they might, experience there. How is this affecting teaching in the Gambia?
Very interesting. In fact, I oversighted that. There are two issues regarding the 3 kilometers to 9 kilometers
off the road. Yeah.
Paid a certain percentage. And 9 kilometers above. Imagine 9 kilometers. You go to Jordan to Bansis, 12 kilometers, and they just take the phone. So they are paid a particular allowance. You'll be surprised, sir, to know that the hardship allowance itself has been tampered with. It has been reduced.
Okay.
The hardship allowance has been reduced. That is serious. And then for no reason. But the most interesting thing is that the union has engaged the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education because we got reports that at some point teachers were looking forward to going to designated hardship areas because of the allowance, chasing these allowances. And that has
I have heard of that. Like
yes.
Teachers will specifically want to be taken somewhere, up countries, just so they can get those allowances.
So that has boomerang in the sense that schools like Julangel and schools on the highway actually ended up not having quality teachers. So we engaged the ministry and made a proposal to them to say, look, allow us to go around and then sensitize our teachers and then agree that we reduce 5% from the normal allowances that is being paid and we spread it out so that the whole of Basse and the whole of Jimara cluster would benefit from this thing and then more schools will be able. We did this arithmetic. You'll be surprised to know that more schools and more teachers were to benefit from the hardship allowance. And with the same amount that government was paying, the total sum of over 127,000 that is savings was going to be made. And this was rejected. So you wonder where the reasoning is. In fact, they should have, if they had reduced the amount, they should have been worried that we're going to complain. But we consulted, we went around from region 3 to region 6. So at times we would get to wonder where the people are reasoning, to be honest with you. So honestly speaking, it's affecting teaching and learning because the reason why the pool factor actually has been compromised. So it's going to boomerang, so to speak.
And have we also had situations where teachers would refuse to go up country?
Yeah. That is
and how does this impact, teaching in this country and the quality of our education?
That is one of the main reasons. That is one of the main reasons why the union took it upon itself to even build a 15 units in Bolivia now. The farthest school in this country. We built a whole complex of staff college just to include. Until we did that, no female teacher had ever gone to Bolivia now on postings until of this time. Right now, I guess we have 2 or 3. Certainly,
are we having issues with the microphone? Okay, it looks like we will come back to you. Mr. Kurang, what would you tell the Gambia government to do in this scenario, in this kind of scenario?
I think like we said, there are fundamental issues that the government should address. I think there has to be, number one, there has to be clarity. The ministry, both the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service Ministry need to come forward and to have a dialogue, a genuine dialogue with the Teachers Union and the Ministry of Education to clarify, how this 30% increment, has been implemented, and why they have these disparities, in the implementation of this 30%. I think that's very important. The second thing is some of the administrative issues which have been mentioned. I think these are responsibilities for both the Ministry of Education, because these are all usually policy and procedural management issues that affect the Ministry of Education as well as the Public Service the Ministry or the Civil Service, and they need to come forward and then have a dialogue with the teachers, because teachers are major stakeholders, in our educational system. So they are affected by educational policies, and whoever, is in charge of policy at the ministries and also the civil service, and is knowing that these policies will affect the teaching profession, need to listen, to the stakeholders and engage them in dialogue in order to be able to have an improvement in the system, because no system is actually concrete, meaning that every system is bound to change by responding to the circumstances that are prevailing at the time. Like he just mentioned, you know, you can have a policy in place, you roll it out, and then you realize that the policy is not getting the desired effects. Like he said, you start paying allowances and to people, and then people start chasing the allowances instead of the objectives of the allowance being achieved. They fail to be achieved. So you have to respond. You have to adjust the policy in order to, because the policy affects the behavior, has behavioral implications, meaning it affects people's behavior. So you need to adjust the policy in order to get the desired behavioral outcome that you need. So I think this is a responsibility for them, and obviously the union has communicated and has taken a stance, and I think it has to be engaged in a dialogue.
Mr. Sowe, we are looking at thousands of Gambian school children missing out on their classes if the strike continues. What message do you have for the Gambian government?
Our message is very simple and straightforward. Like, I will keep on emphasizing that this is an obligation. Because to be honest with you, if the general order says A, B, C, and you want to say, do otherwise, then that is in contravention of the spirit of and letter of the regulation. You see, government has put in place 5 books called rule book. You have the PSC Act, PSC regulation, the general order, of course, the Code of Professional Ethics and Conduct, and the financial regulation. And these what govern the public and the civil service. So what baffles us most is the fact that what they are doing is contravening the very regulations that should govern our conduct. And we're demanding a simple question, and people are refusing to answer. Well, I think, like I said, I'll keep saying this thing, the ball is in their court. If we are invited and the response are given and they are appropriate, we will definitely. But we want them to do the needful. And we are certainly not compromising that. Regrettably, yes, the kids are suffering, the parents will be disturbed. We have a moral duty to apologize to them. We can't help it. I have my kids going to school as well, so it will affect us all. But we want this thing to be fixed.
One question though, this pay issue, because recently we've also seen a lot of teachers leaving government, public schools and then going private. Do you think this might have also contributed to that?
I'm not quite sure whether that might be the trend, because I'm also privileged to sit on a committee responsible for promotion, appointment, and discipline of teachers, and I have seen even people coming from the banks, because at some point I think the ministry was doing fairly well in terms of attracting teachers, but recruitment goes with retention. The retention strategy is very poor. You'll be surprised that teachers teaching for 5 years, the retention allowance is as small as $500. What can $500 do to retain you in the system? That's a mockery, to be honest with you. I was personally, out of interest, doing some simple analysis, and then my figures stand to be corrected. I was even engaging a particular National Assembly member. If government can spend, I stand to be corrected, over $140 million on vehicle procurement, and then increasing some public servants' salary to a fortune, and cannot pay a teacher $6,000, then you question how serious we are. If you can provide 2, 4 million or 3 million vehicles, one just for utility, and a cluster monitor cannot have a functional motor bicycle to monitor 17 schools, you begin to wonder. So these are some basic. You don't need to be an economics like my brother to do. It's just simple arithmetic to know that it's a misplaced priority in some cases.
Mr. Kurang, we have people in the education sector receiving as low as $2,000. Meanwhile, our National Assembly just approved a budget where they will have their pays increased. What does this say about Gambia as a country?
Yeah, I think we're talking about the seriousness and the prioritization of what the government prioritizes in terms of its expenditures, and in terms of the looking at the different sectors. And we have seen, it's true, when you look at the government budget, you have seen we have seen that there are expenditures that are very, very discretionary. Like he said, we know about the vehicle expenses, the traveling expenses that are there. We have the Ministry of Finance, well financed in terms of well allocated, and it's just a service department, because you see, exactly.
Over-bloated foreign service as well.
The government, the foreign service, so the government has got service departments and it has got core departments or core ministries like education, agriculture, the health. This, you could say that all other departments or all other ministries are there to support these key departments. So, if you are Minister of Finance or you are Minister of Foreign Affairs, you're not actually bringing any money for us as such. You're not bringing any tangible, results for us. So we call you a service department in accounting. You are there to support as support departments. So, but we've seen lots of allocations, well-oiled machinery within these support departments. And when it comes to the key departments, the core departments within the government or the core ministries, we've seen a very confrontational attitude in terms of settling budgeting issues, because I must mention, you cannot forget that we had a previous strike here where with the public nurses, and the results was, the ending was very ugly, because for me, it was disappointing. I think the government has this issue, this approach of weight and pounds, meaning that the public health sector workers went on strike, and I at that time I wrote a piece to say that their bargaining power is very small compared to other unions, and as a result, the government overpowered them, and so
suspended for some time.
They were suspended and they were subdued in apologizing. So I think this is an arm-twisting approach, in terms of dealing with key departments and key ministries. So this is really a lot left to be desired. Yeah.
Mr. Sowe, finally, I will let you give your last word before we end this program.
Yeah, simply put, our doors are open. The National Executive Committee is open for dialogue, but we are demanding for our answers, and we want these answers to be provided for and accordingly and appropriately. And to be honest, we are not settling for anything less than what is due for us. And this, we are serious about it. And then I don't want to sound cautionary, but I want to extend my a message to all regional education directors and education officers to be mindful of what they will be doing and probably might be asked to do, because we are very serious with this. And I mean, we are very serious with this. We are monitoring, so we are keeping our members posted on the trends and the development and possible line of actions in the future. We have a lineup of a host of things, up to the point of even, if you like, boycotting all government functionaries, even including government election duties, so to speak. I wouldn't hesitate to say that. So we have categories, and I don't think we'll get to that level. I hope government is listening, and they're listening very well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sowe. Thank you very much for coming to the FAT Network, and thank you very much, Mr. Kurang. This now brings us to the end of this exclusive interview. Do join us tomorrow if you can. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.